Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udirayat Nashtaprayeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhakti Bhavati Nashtaki Krishnaya Vasudevaya Devaki Nandanaya Cha Nanda Gopa Kumaraya Govindaya Namo Namaha. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapradantikam. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashataya Deshatarine Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Padayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namane Gotase Namaha. Vanchakalpatarubhyasya Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesh Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktavinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So we welcome everyone for today morning Srimad Bhagavatam discussion. We are on the second canto, and today we are supposed to begin with the 10th chapter, the concluding chapter of the second canto. So we'll begin with that. It's a little big chapter, and in fact a little technical subject matter. Here Sarga is discussed, which we have already discussed in detail in the 6th chapter of this second canto. So I am not going to go in much of the details of that subject matter. Just give me a quick second. Let me arrange my table so I can see the book properly. 1 second. All right. So a little quick overview of this chapter, and then we'll take a look at it. So this chapter has 51 verses, the 10th chapter of second canto, and the subject matter of this chapter is being discussed. We have to see the last few verses of the second 9th chapter, then we'll understand what is the subject matter of 10th chapter. So if you see from verse number 44 onwards. 43rd verse, if you check it out, the second ninth chapter. I hope all of you have a book with you. I will not be able to share a screen. If in case anyone wants to share their screen and show Srimad Bhagavatam verses, they are welcome to do so. I'll just read from the book. So here in the second canto, 9th chapter, verse number 43, that is means the previous chapter, Narad Muni inquired from Brahma. And it is said, the great sage Narada inquired in detail from his father Brahma, the great grandfather of all the universe, after seeing him well satisfied. What did he ask? Tasmaidam Bhagavatam Puranam Dashalakshanam Proptam Bhagavata Praha Pritaha Putraya Bhutakrit. Thereupon, the supplementary Vedic literature Srimad Bhagavatam, which was described by the Supreme Personality Godhead and which contains 10 characteristics, Dasha Lakshanam, was told with satisfaction by Brahma to son Narada. So Brahmaji began to answer Narad Muni's inquiry, and then he instructed him on the subject matter, which contains Dasha Lakshanam, the 10 characteristics. So that will be the first subject matter of the 10th chapter. And then what happened? In the 45th verse, it is said, in succession, great sage Narada, then 45th talks about the lineage. Narada Muni spoke the same subject matter which he heard from Brahmaji to Vyasadeva, like that. And then in 46th verse, it comes, O king, your questions as to how the universe became manifested from the gigantic form of the personality of Godhead, as well as all other questions, I shall answer in detail by explanation of the 4 verses already mentioned. And then the question which were raised by Parikshit Maharaj to Sukdev Goswami about Sarga and Visarga, that would be also answered. So 10th chapter has 4 set of sections. The very first set of section from first verse number 1 to 9 talks about the 10 characteristics of a Purana. Then the second subject matter is verse number 10 to verse number 35, where primary creation is discussed. And then Visarga, secondary creation. So what is primary creation? Primary creation refers to, I have given this example to all of you before also, just like to help you understand. Primary creation is, let's say a builder who owns a land and now he wants to build a society on that particular piece of land, let's say 200 acres of land. So to fulfill his desire that he wants to have it, build a community there, he would need an architectural map, he would need government permissions, he would need a contractor, he would need a labor, he would need water connection, electricity connection, he would know the raw materials with which the buildings will be constructed. So in that way, he does all the background preparation. He hires a contractor and to give the project that this is what you have to build it. And to that contractor, he provides every essential requirement which is needed, or every thing which is needed for the building of that community or that society. So that is called as Visarga, the primary creation. It is also called as elemental creation, which means the elements came into existence. And then, which means all the raw materials assembled together. And then happens Sarga. And the contractor of this creation is Brahmaji. Owner of this creation is Aham Sarvasya Prabhu Mata Sarvam Pravartate. Owner is Krishna. And the contractor is Brahmaji. Then Brahmaji, then he begins to direct, or let's say, then contractor hires people. Then Brahmaji creates progeny himself, 4 Kumaras, then Rudra, and the Manasik Putra, then Swambhuva, Satrupa, etc. And the hiring happens. The contractor does the hiring, hire labor, etc. And then the mixing of the raw material and the construction begins. So like that, Visarga happens. So this primary creation called as Sarga, that happens at the beginning of the life of Brahma. At the beginning of the life of Brahma. What about Visarga? Visarga happens every morning of Brahma. So we have already discussed in this canto several times, there are 4 kinds of pralaya. One is said to be Nitya, Naimittika, Brahmitika, and what is that 4th one? I believe is Mukti, if that is correct. So that's the Sanskrit. I'll tell you the English equivalent. Nitya pralaya means the death of an individual. So every time, this is, we take a birth, we die, we take a birth, we die. So that is called Nitya Pralaya, which is keeps on going on in this world. Then other pralaya that occurs at the end of Brahma's day. And a very simple way to understand this is, again, we have discussed in the past. I'm explaining through the analogies. The Brahma's birth happens on Padma, on the lotus. So lotus blooms in the water in a lake during the sunrise in the morning hours. And when the sunset happens, the lotus shrinks. Similarly, at the end of Brahma's day, this whole creation shrinks in the Garbhodaksha Vishnu. So this whole universe gets destroyed. First, there is a fire coming from the, you can say, eyes from the, what you call as, our Anashesh, and then all that thing happens like that. The destruction described. And when Brahmaji wakes up in the morning, when the lotus blooms again, and then Brahmaji has to recreate. That is called as Visarga. So Visarga happens every morning. So that Visarga is described. And then finally, this is from verse number 36 to verse number 47. And then the last section, verse number 48 to 51, after describing Visarga, then Sukdev Goswami says, so all right, Parikshit Maharaj, now let me tell you about Kalpa, about the time scale actually. Because you asked for the time scale also. At that point of time, when the conversation goes on, we'll see that they change the subject matter. The listeners change the subject matter. We'll see that what is the discussion comes in the last 3 verses like that. So here we'll go through a quick overview of the subject matter. I've given you a little background here. If in case you have not read the second kind of 6th chapter, in the 6th chapter we had discussed in detail. And again, we're going to discuss the subject matter more in detail in the 3rd canto, where the subject matter would be taken more elaborately. So here we'll just go through the verses briefly and take a look at some application points. So text number 1, 2nd canto, chapter number 10, text number 1, Shri Shukavacha Atra Sarga Visargascha Sthanam Poshanamutaya Manvantara Ishanu Katha Nirodho Muktarashraya. Somebody would like to read the translation, they can raise their hands. Mother Poonam, go ahead, please read the translation.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Yes.
Sri Shukadeva Goswami said, in the Srimad Bhagavatam, there are 10 divisions of statements regarding the following: the creation of the universe, subcreation, planetary system, protection by the Lord, the creative impetus, the change of Manus, the science of God, returning home back to Godhead, liberation, and the summum bonum.
So what are these 10 subject matter? Then Sukdev Goswami himself explains in the following verses. So the question may arise, first of all, Srimad Bhagavatam is glorified as Mahapuran. Why glorified as Mahapuran? There are Puranas, but it's said to be Mahapuran. There are various parameters. In case if you want to know more about it, I would have discussed during the course of our discussion in this Srimad Bhagavatam. But we do this Light of Bhagavatam series on every Sunday evening. Of that, the very first episode I had dedicated to describing these glories of Srimad Bhagavatam. There I had made a point about why Srimad Bhagavatam is said to be Mahapurana. I'll just give you one point here. If anyone is interested, they can just refer to that subject matter. And that Light of Bhagavatam series, we are discussing 24 stories from Bhagavatam. That's the subject matter. So Mahapurana, one of the quality of Mahapurana is that it should have discussion on this 10 subject matters. What are the 10 subject matters? You just read the translation, we'll explain in a short while. Now, we all know what is the subject matter of Srimad Bhagavatam. Ete chamsa kalhapamsa krishnastu Bhagavan swayam indrari vyakulam lokam vidyanti yuge yuge. Like that, there is a verse. So that is said to be the mool or the root verse of this whole Srimad Bhagavatam. That substantiates or that establishes what is the subject matter of Bhagavad Gita. Subject matter of Bhagavad Gita is Lord Shri Krishna. So question may arise, if subject matter is Krishna, then why are we having 10 subject matter like creation, secondary creation, Sarga, Visarga, Sthanam, the material universe, Poshanam, how does the Lord take care of his devotees, etc., etc. Why don't we just have direct discussion of Krishna? Imagine all the 12 cantos were nothing but Krishna's pastimes, Vrindavan Lila, Mathura Lila, Dwarka Lila. How many of you think will be excited then to read all stories? Now it's a little complicated. What would you prefer? When you have wonderful stories of Krishna's pastime, how many of you say, yes, that will make it easy? Now, this chapter, after listening to this chapter, when this Sarga Visarga discussion was going on, and I'll tell you, when our Sukdev Goswami was begin to discuss about Padma Kalpa, at that point of time, this is a conversation going on between Sutta Goswami and Shaunakrishi, and Sutta Goswami is quoting the conversation between Sukdev Goswami and Parikshit Maharaj. So Shaunakadi Rishi immediately said, oh, wait a second. My dear Sutta Goswami, what you just spoke is already bewildering our mind. It's too much technical. Can you just take a break, and can you just tell us in the first canto, I believe in the 7th or 8th chapter, you had told us that how Vidurji came back from pilgrimage? So then they asked a question, can you please tell us why did Vidurji went for pilgrimage? See, people like knowing, hearing stories. And they immediately asked, please tell us why did Vidurji went to pilgrimage and where did you all go to pilgrimage? We have heard that when Vidurji went out for pilgrimage, then he met a great devotee, Uddhava. So can you please tell us about that samvad? And they immediately paused the subject matter. Therefore, when the third canto will begin, with the Vidura and Uddhava samvad. And after a few chapters, then again this discussion, the technical discussion, which actually Parikshit Maharaj asked Sukdev Goswami, begins again. So yeah, it's a difficult subject matter. So why don't we have Krishna Krishna or discussion of the pastimes everywhere? So let us give you an example. One devotee was making this point. I'm just paraphrasing his point, and very beautifully explained this subject matter. Why this 10 subject matters are essential. Just like if you say, my son is studying in IIT. So when you say your son is studying in IIT, that's okay, fine. Let's say you're speaking to your friend visiting you from France, and you want to glorify your son, and you say, my son is studying in IIT. And you'll think, okay, what's the big deal? But now if you want to really glorify your son, then what will you do? You'll actually say what IIT is all about. Oh, IIT is a top-notch university, produces scholars, you get the highest paycheck if you're a graduate of IIT and whatnot. You're getting a point? So when you want to glorify the person, you also glorify things related. In other words, you also share knowledge in things related to that person. And that makes a complete glorification of that individual. So similar to glorify Krishna in totality, the discussion about his activities in relationship to this world is also discussed in length. And when we understand that, then we actually understand Krishna's glory in totality. That's the reason the subject matter is discussed in that way. Okay, let's go to text number 2. We'll read the translations here now. Okay, Mother Subhashri, please read the translation, second verse.
To isolate the transcendence of the summum bonum, the symptoms of the rest are described sometimes by Vedic inference, sometimes by direct explanation, and sometimes with summary explanations given by the great sages.
Okay, text number 3 will talk about Sarga. So let's take a look. Mother Poonam, go ahead, read the translation.
The elementary creation of 16 items of matter, namely the 5 elements fire, water, land, air, and sky, sound, form, taste, smell, touch, and the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, skin, and mind, is known as Sarga.
So elemental creation is Sarga. The first 2 lines of the verse describe Sarga. Then,
whereas subsequent resultant interaction of the modes of the material nature is called Visarga.
Yeah, so जब ये सब हो जाता है उसके बाद इनका mixing जो शुरू होता है under the modes of material nature, that is called as Visarga. So third canto largely will discuss about Sarga. And there is some discussion on Visarga also, like that. Okay, text number 4. Please go ahead. Okay, Mother Poonam, you go ahead and read it.
Its 4 translation. The right situation for the living entities is to obey the laws of the Lord and thus be in perfect peace of mind under the protection of Supreme Personality of Godhead.
All right. So we'll go one by one. So this talks about sthanam, which means the right situation for a living entity, which means to be situated under the shelter of the Lord, to follow the laws of the Lord. So this is discussed in 5th canto. You want to mark it yourself or note it, so you know how the 3rd canto to 12th canto talk about this 10 subject matter. Then the next is, go ahead, please read. And protection of the Supreme Lord. And the protection of the Supreme Lord is Poshanam, which is discussed in the 6th canto. 6th canto, we have a story of Ajamil, then we have story of Vratrasur, like that is discussed. Then go ahead, next line.
The Manus and their laws are meant to give right direction in life.
That is discussed in 8th canto. One second. Which is Manvantara. So that is being discussed in your 8th canto. Next.
The impetus for activity is the desire for fruitive work.
Yes, that is Uti. So if you go back and take a look at the verse again, Atra Sarga. Sarga is the 3rd, Visarga is the 4th, Sthanam is the 5th. I'm talking about the 2nd verse of this chapter. So wait a second. Sorry, the 1st verse of this chapter. Like this. Sanam, Poshanam is being discussed in this chapter. This verse that we read, 4th verse. Utaya. Uti means impetus for activity. And that has been described in the 7th canto, where the rules for Varnashrama Dharma, Brahmachari life, Grihastha life, all that has been discussed. And the initial part discussed about Prahlad Maharaj and Narasimhadev, like this. And then Manvantara. So Sarga Visarga Sthanam Poshanam Manvantara Ishanukatha. So Manvantara has been discussed in the 8th canto. So that's the subject matter. Let's go to text number 5. Okay, go ahead.
The science.
Maybe I can read from Sanskrit. That will make it a little easy for all of you. Okay, I'll give you the word to word first of all. Avatara Anucharitaram. Avatara Anucharitam. Haresh cha asya anuvartinam. Pumsam ishakatha prokta. Nana akhyo no brahmitaha. So 9th canto talks about Ishanukatha. So 9th canto, what is the subject? Ishanukatha. The science of God describes the incarnation, personality of Godhead, and different activities together with the activities of his great devotees. So 9th canto, you'll read about all various incarnations. The whole Lord Ram is also described there briefly, like that. One thing about this different cantos touching on different subject matter, yes, there is a prominent theme, but all other subject matters, are also part of that particular canto. What is the most prominent subject matter? That is being discussed here. And then the 6th, so our Sarga, Visarga, Sthanam, Poshanam, Utaya, Manvantara, Ishanukatha. 7th subject matter has been discussed, right? Ishanukatha. And then Ishanukatha ke baad aata hai Nirodho Muktir Ashraya. So let's take a look at text number 6. Nirodho Asyanu Shayanam Atmana Sahashakti Bhi Muktir Hitvan Yatharupam Swarupena Vayavastitihi. Please read the translation.
The merging of the living entity, along with his conditional living tendencies, with the mystic lying down of Mahavishnu, is called the winding up of the cosmic manifestation.
What is Nirodha? Nirodha is pralay, the winding up activity. That is being described in the 12th canto. Go ahead, next.
Liberation is the permanent situation of the form of living entity after he gives up the changeable, gross, and subtle material bodies. So
that is Mukti, which is the subject matter of 11th canto. And now text number 7 discusses the final subject matter of out of this 10 subject matters of Srimad Bhagavatam. Abhashascha nirodhascha yato vasti adhyavashishyate sashraya param brahma Paramatmeti Shabdyate Ashraya, the ultimate shelter. Please read the translation.
The Supreme One, who is celebrated as a Supreme Being or a Supreme Soul, is the Supreme Source of the cosmic manifestation, as well as its reservoir and winding up. Thus, he is the Supreme Fountainhead, the Absolute Truth. So, these are the 10 subject matter. Once again, Sarga means primary creation, elemental. Visarga means secondary creation. Sarga, Visarga. Sthanam. Sthana refers to the right situation for living entity, which means to follow the orders of the Lord. So, Sarga, Visarga, Sthanam. Poshanam, how Lord protects or maintains his devotee. Sarga, Visarga, Sthanam, Poshanam. Then Manvantara, where the discussion of different Manus comes, which is subject matter of 8th canto. Then Utaya, the impetus for activities, fruitive activities, particularly 7th canto. So if you take a look at the first verse,
Sarga Visarga Sthanam Poshanam Utaya Manvantara. Ishanukatha means Katha, hearing about Isha, the pastimes of Ishwar. So that is being discussed largely in the 9th canto about different avatars. And then Nirodho, the 10th subject matter, which is Pralay, which is discussed in 12th. Then Mukti, which is the 9th subject matter, which is about liberation, which is discussed in 11th canto. And finally, the 10th subject matter, Ashraya. Who is the Ashraya? Who is the shelter of all? That is the subject matter of 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Like this, Srimad Bhagavatam discusses on these 10 subject matters. So that's about this. And now let's take a look at verse number 8 and 9. Mother Subhashi, please read out the translation for verse number 8 and 9 together.
The individual person possessing different instruments of senses is called the Adhyatmic person, and the individual controlling deity of the senses is called Advaitic. The embodiment seen on the eyeballs is called the Adi-Bhautik person.
Okay, next.
All three of the above mentioned stages of different living entities are interdependent. In the absence of one, another is not understood. But the Supreme Being who sees every one of them as the shelter of the shelter is independent of all, and therefore he is the Supreme Shelter.
Okay, what it means, I'll give you a little understanding of it. So what is the 8th word talks about? It talks about Adhyatmika, Adhidaivika, Adhibhautika. So what is Adhibhautika? This subject matter is being discussed in the 8th chapter of Bhagavad Gita also, where Arjuna asked 8 questions in the 8th chapter. And there he asked, what is Adhyatmika, Adhibhautika, Adhidevika? Just to a little bit make you familiar of the discussion in the 8th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, there, when Arjuna asked what is Adhyatmika, there in the context, the meaning of Adhyatmika is the nature of the self. That is what Prabhupada discussed, which means to serve. Adhibhautika is this whole material world, and Adhidaivika is the universal form or the super soul. You know, who is the Adi means origin, like that. Now, here in this discussion, let's read the translation once again of the 8th verse.
The individual person possessing different instruments of senses is called the Adhyatmic person, and the individual controlling deity of the senses is called Adi-Daivik. The embodiment seen on the eyeballs is called the Adi-Bhautik person.
So here, now this is being described in relation to an individual. And there it was discussed in relation to the universal form. So here, what is Adhibhautika or Adhibhautika refers to the gross senses. Then Adhidaivika, who are the devatas, the sense devatas for the senses. And I'll give you an example. And then Adhyatmika refers to subtle senses. If I understand, this is a little technical. Let's take a look at it. So what it says, there are 3 things. Bhautika, then the sense devatas, Adhidevika, and then Adhyatmika, the subtle senses. For example, if somebody is blind, his instrument, Adhibhautika, is destroyed. If somebody is blind, now can such a person still see? Yes or no? Give me a quick thumbs up if you think such a person can still perform the function of seeing. Yes, he can still perform the function of seeing. So which means there is a gross sense and there is a subtle sense. And that subtle sense is able to function through different gross sense. Now how does he see? He sees through the sense of touch. He sees through the sense of smell. And if a person walks in with a fragrance, he immediately understand, you know, okay, this is a fragrance which my friend often puts. So my friend has come. He's seeing a friend, although he's not physically seen. So you're getting the point here? So this is called as Adhibhautika, Adhidevika, Adhyatmika. Now read the 9th verse translation again.
All 3 of the above mentioned stages of different living entities are interdependent.
Okay, very important. Adhyatmika, Adhidevika, Adhibhautika, they are interdependent. My gross senses depend on the sense devatas, and they also have a dependency on my subtle senses. Next.
In the absence of one, another is not understood. But the Supreme Being who sees every one of them as the shelter of the shelter is independent of all. And
Okay.
therefore,
Yeah, go ahead.
And therefore, he is the supreme shelter.
So these are interdependent. Sense devatas we'll discuss in the third canto when the subject matter is taken at length. So for different parts, different limbs of our body, there are different deity who's managing it, controlling it, through which the sense organs are working. For example, this body is nothing but a vehicle. Let's make it in a very simple form. Try to have a simple discussion here. This body is nothing but a vehicle. Now, when you have a car, let's say you purchase a Honda City. Now, Honda City has different components. The car has a different component. It has a tire, has a steering wheel, has lights, has a horn, has a body, has a glasses, and has a seat and everything. Now, do you understand and acknowledge all these things are created or provided by different suppliers? For example, MRF provides you tires. The glasses could be provided by another company. The steering wheel could have been done by another company. The sitting the seats created by another. The seat covers are provided by another. Is that clear? So the car, the assembled car, the final piece that Honda is delivering you, that is nothing but Hare Krishna. What is this music coming around? Okay, sorry. Somebody's interesting ringtone is playing here. What was I saying? So every component of the car, there is some separate owner for that. Similarly, in this makeup of this body that we have, this body functions because there are different devatas who are actually the owners of it. Just like Surya Devta is said to be Devta for the eyes. So in our Vedic tradition, there is a practice of offering water to Surya Devta in the morning. आपने लोगों ने देखा होगा सूर्य देवता को सुबह उठते ही जल अर्पण किया जाता है. फॉर एग्जाम्पल वन पर्सनैलिटी हु वुड ऑफन डू वाज कर्ण. उसका क्या था, वो सुबह उठते ही सूर्य देवता को जल अर्पण करता था. 1 second, I'm just getting distracted. There's a ringtone. Okay, stopped. So it is said in the Vedic scriptures, if you offer water to Surya Devta, तांबे के glass में particularly, what's it, मटका जो भी होता है वो, tumbler you want to call it, and if you offer this water by chanting a particular mantra, as we have discussed in the past for the science of mantras, when you chant a mantra, that mantra invokes the attention of that particular devta, and then you offer water. Let's say in the case of Surya Devta, those who regularly does it would not have eyesight issues. This is what it is mentioned. It is a fact. It's a fact. So, unless the Surya Devta empowers this physical organ, we really cannot see. And I'll give you a very simple example to understand. You might not be able to see the subtlety of how it's functioning. If there is no sunlight, what is the value of your vision? हाँ बोलोगे कोई बात नहीं, हम एडवांस्ड हैं, इलेक्ट्रिसिटी से काम चलाएंगे. अरे बाबा, your electricity would also not come into existence if there is no sunlight. Because of sunlight only your electricity is coming. So that is how the sense devta. So it's mentioned they all are interdependent. However, above all of them, but the supreme being who sees every one of them as a shelter of the shelter is independent of all. But yes, all of us are interdependent on these things. We are dependent at all times. But one person who is independent is the Supreme Person in Godhead. Prabhupada in the purport writes, if you see at the 6th line in the purport, without our having eyes, the sunlight is useless. And without sunlight, the eyes are useless. Thus, they are interdependent. None of them is independent. Therefore, natural question arises concerning who made them interdependent. The one who has made such a relationship of interdependence must be ultimately completely independent. And then in the next paragraph, the individual living entity, the jiva, is always dependent on the super soul, Paramatma. Upadrashta anumanta cha bharta bhokta mahaishwara. Upadrashta, overseer, anumanta, gives a permission. So who is that? Bharta bhokta mahaishwara, of all the Ishwara, I'm the Mahaishwara, that is Paramatma residing in the heart of every living entity, is who sanctions all these activities. And a living entity is always dependent. That's the point of discussion here. Okay, this is just the beginning of technicalities. ये तो ट्रेलर था. अब शुरू होता है 10th verse से actual sarga. So from 10th verse to verse number 35 is about the discussion of elemental creation. So we'll do one thing. Mother Poonam, okay, Ravi Bodkar, anyone else? Mother Priyanka, if you all want to read, if you have that access. So you all are going to be very quick. So what we're going to do, let's say Mother Poonam begins translation of one verse. Subhashri, you read the next, Ravi the third, and Mother Priyanka fourth. And others who would like to read, they're welcome to do that. One more verse. Mother Poonam, 10th verse. After reading the verse, if I need to add a point, I'll make a point. If you're really not understanding it, don't be surprised. It's not so easily understood. I would try my best here. Otherwise, go back and hear to the recording of the 6th chapter of this canto, or else in 3rd canto we'll again revisit when the subject matter is discussed in length. Go ahead, please. Translation.
After separating the different universes, the gigantic universal form of the Lord, Mahavishnu, which came out of the causal ocean, the place of appearance for the first Purusha Avatara, entered into each of the separate universe, desiring to lie on the created transcendental water, Garbhodaka.
Mahavishnu expanded as Garbhodaksha Vishnu into the each universe. Text number 11.
That supreme person is not impersonal and therefore is distinctively a Nara or person. Therefore, the transcendental water created from the supreme Nara is known as Nara. And because
Nara.
Nara. And because he lies down on that water, he is known as Narayana.
Narayana. Next.
One should definitely know that all material ingredients, activities, time and modes, and the living entities who are meant to enjoy them all exist by his mercy only. And as soon as he does not care for them, everything becomes non-existent.
So the process, Mahavishnu expanded Garbhodakshai Vishnu, and then he lied on the water. And then from his desire, everything began to manifest. He desired, and that happened. That's the point is mentioned here. Text number 13.
The Lord, while lying on his bed of the mystic slumber, generated the seminal symbol, golden in hue, through external energy out of his desire to manifest varieties of living entities from himself alone.
All right, like that. So then the creation began to happen, the living entity. Text number 14.
Just hear from me how the potency of his lordship divides one into three, called the controlling entities, the controlled entities and the material bodies in the manner mentioned above.
Next.
As the followers of a king follow their law,
15th.
From the sky situated within the transcendental body of the manifesting Mahavishnu, sense energy, mental force, and bodily strength are all generated, as well as the sum total of the fountainhead of the total living force.
Okay, so what is going to happen now, which you have seen before also. So now, step by step, things are happening. It's a process. The process is taking place now. And the very first part of the process was Garbhodakshay or Vishnu have entered into the ocean within that universe lying there. And as per his desire, all the things began to manifest. So what had manifested before? The very first thing that manifested was Semina, Virium, which is described as Hirmaya, the golden complexion, like this, because now it is a time to manifest living entities. Text number 14, it says then, just hear from me how the potential lordship divides one into three. Call the controlling deities, controlling entities, and the material body. Adideva, Adhyatma, Adibhutam. So now, how the Mahat Tattva begins to multiply. So that is what is being described in text number 16. So let me give you a simple example so that maybe your comprehension will become really easy. It is almost like the creation in this world, how the creation happens, if you really want to experience that or understand that, is something what happens within the womb of a mother. It's just the same thing. It's the same process. It's not the creation happens like this. Just like the womb of the mother has to hold a child in her womb for around 9 months approximately, and with the time things begin to manifest one by one, and after, I guess at the end of 2nd or 3rd month, the child gets limbs and different parts of the body manifest, consequently as the months or the weeks passes by. Similarly, Mahatattva gets divided under the influence of the three modes of material nature and the purview of time, then gets into the different activities. That is what is going to have one element after element. The very first thing when this all thing happened, Mahatattva under the influence of Sattva, Rajas, Tamogun, and the time, the very first matter that manifested was sky, ether. And then with the combination of that, different things will come into existence. That is what we just read in the text number 15. Now text number 16 onwards, continue reading.
As the follower of the king, as the followers of the king follow their lord, similarly, when the total energy is in motion, all other living entities move. And when the total energy stops endeavoring, all the other living entities stop sensual activities.
Next.
The living force, being agitated by the Virata Purusha, generated hunger and thirst, and when he desired to drink and eat, the mouth opened.
Please read the first 3 lines of the purport.
The living force, being agitated by the
No,
Virata...
the purport. First 3 lines of the purport.
I don't have it, Prabhuji.
Oh, okay. Who else is going to read? Ravi, go ahead.
The process by which all living beings in the womb of the mother develop their sense organs and sense perceptions appears to follow the same principles in the case of the Virat Purush, the sum total of all living entities.
All right. So this is what I was saying. So Prabhupada mentions that's how it happens. Text number 18. Go ahead, Ravi Prabhu.
From the mouth, the palate became manifested, and thereupon the tongue was also generated. After this, all the different tests came into existence so that the tongue can release them.
Continue, Ravi Prabhu.
This gradual process of evolution.
No, not the purport, translation.
When the supreme desired to speak, speeches were vibrated from the mouth. Then the controlling deity fire was generated from the mouth. But when he was lying in the water, all these functions remained suspended.
20.
Thereafter, when the Supreme Purush desired to smell odors, the nostrils and respiration were generated, the nasal instrument, and the odors came into existence. And the controlling deity of air carrying smell also became manifested.
So we have, we have 5 knowledge acquiring senses, the eyes, the ears, the nose, the tongue, and the touch. And then we have 5 working senses. And then for this 5 knowledge acquiring senses, we also have 5 sense objects. The vision, the taste, the smell, like that. So one by one, everything is getting into existence now. Now, how all these things, for example, your ability to see is not your credit. It is not that you desired it. Neither your parents desired it. How did this ability to see manifested? That is what is being discussed here. The Lord desired to see, the eyes manifested, and the sense object, which means the form manifested, which we can see. The Lord desired to taste, so the palate, the tongue developed, and then the what we can taste, the kind of object developed. That is what we can discuss here. Text number 21. Go ahead.
Thus, when everything existed in darkness, the Lord desired to see himself and all that was created. Then the eyes, the illuminating God, sun, the power of vision, and the object of sight all became manifested.
So this is all something like, limb by limb develops in the body, within the womb of a mother. So the mother but doesn't know how it is happening, but this is happening. So how it is happening by the will of the Lord. When this creation is happening by the will of the Lord, similarly what's happening within the womb of the mother is also happening by the will of the Lord. Like that. Text number 22. I mean, think about it. It is so exciting and fascinating if you just think on the subject matter. The semina or the semen mixed with, I believe it's called ovum. It mixes with that, which means 2 chemicals. They come together and mixes. And with those 2 chemicals, the person who's holding that chemical, who claims to be the most intelligent species in this creation, has no idea what's happening. Has no clue of it. And the chemical mixes, transfuses, transmutates, or whatever you want to call it, the way, and it goes on, and it's just like the process has been put into churning. For example, let's say sweet rice. It's not that if you just go and put milk and the rice on the stove in a container, sweet rice will get prepared. If you do so, what's going to potentially get prepared? The milk will be burnt time, and personally monitor it. You will not have sweet rice. Similarly, if you just take a cooker and put some rice, put some vegetables, it's not going to give you khichdi. There is a process by which you do it. So my question to all of you, which all of you should think about it. All of us have been born from the womb of a mother, or those of you are mothers already. How is it happening? 2 chemicals come together. I'm saying in the terms of a gross matter, the chemicals comes together, they come together and they go through some process, and that is creating a life, and it goes into different limbs, gets created, I mean, we have no intervention into it. And the biggest miracle is happening almost every hour, every day, every second. So many child or so many kids are being born. Is itself a miracle. And we have no intervention to it. Thank God we are not interfering. If we begin to interfere, think about what will happen. We'll be getting the beyond 8.4 million species then. So टेढ़ा मेढ़ा जीव जंतु निकल के आएंगे बाहर. ठीक है, let's go ahead. Continue reading.
By development of the desire of the great sages to know the ears, the power of hearing, the controlling deity of hearing, and the objects of hearing became manifested. The great sages desired to hear about the self.
Continue.
When there was a desire to perceive the physical characteristics of matter such as softness, hardness, warmth, cold, lightness, and heaviness, the background of sensation, the skin pores, the hairs on the body, and their controlling deities, the trees, were generated. Within and outside, the skin is a covering of air through which sense perception became prominent. Thereafter, when the Supreme Person desired to
Whenever you read the next translation, always say the text number. So, allows us to keep a focus.
Text 24. Thereafter, when the Supreme Person desired to perform varieties of work, the two hands and their controlling strength and Indra, the demigod in heaven, became manifested, as also the acts dependent on both the hands and the demigod. Text 25. Thereupon, because of his desiring to control movement, his legs became manifested, and from the legs, the controlling deity named Vishnu was generated. By his personal supervision of this act, all varieties of human beings are busily engaged in dutiful occupational sacrifice. Text 26. Thereupon, for sexual pleasure, begetting offspring, and testing heavenly nectar, the Lord developed the genitals, and thus there is the genital organ and his controlling deity, the Prajapati. The object of sexual pleasure and the controlling deity are under the control of the genitals of the Lord. Text 27. Thereafter, when he desired to evacuate the refuse of eatables, the evacuating whole anus and the sensory organ thereof developed along with the controlling deity Mitra. The sensory organ and the evacuating substance are both under the shelter of the controlling deity. Text 28. Thereafter, when he desired to move from one body to another, the navel and the air of departure and death were combinedly created. The navel is the shelter for both, namely death and the separating force. Text 29. When there was a desire to have food and drink, the abdomen and the intestines and also the arteries became manifested. The rivers and seas are the source of their sustenance and metabolism. Text number 30. When there was a desire to think about the activities of his own energy, then the heart, the seat of the mind, the moon, the determination, and all desire became manifested. Text 31. The 7 elements of the body, namely the thin layer on the skin itself, the flesh, blood, fat, marrow, and bone are all made of earth, water, fire, whereas the life breath is produced by the sky, water, and air. Text 32.
We can read this purport. Please read the 31st verse purport.
The construction of the whole material world is prominently made by 3 elements, namely earth, water, and fire. But the living force is produced by sky, air, and water. So water is the common element in both the gross and subtle forms of all material creation, and it should be noted herewith that due to necessity, water being most prominent in the material creation is the principal element of all the 5. This material body is thus an embodiment of the 5 elements, and the gross manifestation is perceived because of 3, namely earth, water, and fire. Sensations of touch are perceived due to the thin layer on the skin, and bone is as good as hard stone. The breathing air of life is produced of sky, air, and water, and therefore open air, regular bath, and ample space in which to live are favorable for healthy vitality.
Very, very important point. How many of you have an experience? Let's say you've gone on Himalayas, or let's say you've gone in some nature and there is spring water. When you drink that fresh water, you feel, re-energized. Similarly, when there is a fresh air, you feel so healthy. And similarly, when you're living in a house and the roof is, is not of, what should I say, ज़्यादा ऊंची नहीं है. If the height between the floor and the roof is not much, how many of you have experienced claustrophobic or, mind feels, heavy? That is a point purpose writing. The reason I read this purport, I just wanted to make this point to all of you. For our well-being, these basic necessities should not be ignored. There is no fresh water, there's no good quality air to breathe in, and there's no enough space to live in. If you ever go to a temple, you would have seen in the temple, the roofs are very high. and it creates an energy. Now, these days, what happened in the apartments, those who live in apartment, anyways, the roof is low. On top of that, they do a false ceiling. And then they create a headache on their head. So many times I go sometimes to the house, it's just like your head is about to bang against the false ceiling. And then they put decorative lights, they put little chandelier, things like this. There is no space to move around. And then you have dozens of furniture around. Somewhere hardly you can put your feet inside the house. No, the house spacious means even if the house is small, you should still make it spacious because that would be healthy. There should be a space for you to move around. Don't clutter it with many things. That is what, for healthy vitality, it is essential. Please go ahead. Fresh produce from the earth like grains, vegetables, or fresh water from water and heat is good for the upkeep of the gross body. Just like those of us who live on the ground or who often walk on the ground is so healthy. I mean, this is something on the Ayurveda, but this is point because in this translation, this point is made. Life breath is produced by the sky, water, and air. Sky you can refer to as space, water and air. And similarly, the whole body is mentioned from earth, water, and fire. We should have fresh water made up of earth. We should be in constant touch with the earth. Therefore, you see people today, these days, walking, they go for a morning walk. And actually, morning walk is more healthy if you walk barefoot. The whole idea is to bring the body in touch with earth. It does so much to the body. But we are totally away from this. Now they have, the jogging floors made up of tiles. And to run on the jogging floors, you cannot run barefoot because it will crack up your knees. Then you have to buy an expensive spring-wale shoes. And the Nike comes and tells you, we've got a very special shoes for you, which is going to keep you healthy. First of all, you give us a wrong platform to run. And then you make us buy expensive shoes and then say, we are so advanced, we're giving the best technology shoes to run on the tiles. You're not supposed to run there, you're supposed to run on the ground. We just made fools day in and day out. Text number 32. Okay, Mother Poonam, go ahead, read out.
Text 32. The sense organs are attached to the modes of material nature, and the modes of material nature are products of the false ego. The mind is subjected to all kinds of material experience, happiness and distress, and the intelligence is the feature of the mind's deliberation.
A very, very important puppet. So please do read it, but we'll still read out some few lines of the puppet. Mother Poonam, you'll see in the middle of the puppet, you'll see, an intelligent person can detect the awkward position of material existence. Found it? So start reading from there. In the middle of the
intelligent person
paragraph.
therefore can attain salvation.
Yeah, the 2 lines after that.
An intelligent person can detect the awkward position of material existence and thus begin to inquire as to what he is, why he is subjected to different kinds of miseries, and how to get rid of all miseries.
So the point is, intelligence means to inquire. The function of intelligence is to inquire. And then few lines below, Prabhupada says, it is advised. So how to use the function of intelligence? Prabhupada says, please read from there, few lines below, it is advised. It
is advised, therefore, that an intelligent person associated with the great sages and saints who are on the path of salvation, by such association, one can receive instructions which are able to slacken the conditioned soul's attachment for matter. And thus the intelligent man gradually gets rid of the illusion of matter and false ego and is promoted to the real life of eternity, knowledge, and bliss.
So how do we use this faculty of intelligence? By associating with sadhus. And they are the one who sharpen our intelligence and then takes us on the path of salvation. Text number 33. Okay, Mother Poonam, go ahead. Read up to 35th verse.
Thus, by all this, the external feature of the personality of Godhead is covered by the gross form, such as those of planets which were explained to you by me. Text 34. Therefore, beyond this gross manifestation is the transcendental manifestation finer than the finest form. It has no beginning, no intermediate stage, and no end. Therefore, it is beyond the limits of expression of mental speculation and is distinct from the material conception. It's 35. Neither of the above forms of the Lord, as just described unto you from the material angle of vision, is accepted by the pure devotees of the Lord who know him well.
Okay, now text number 36. This was about Sarga. All that essential elements have been created. Now from text number 36 to text number 47, Visarga. This Visarga has been discussed in the later on in the cantos and elaborately. Once again, we'll take a look briefly on it. Third canto also talks about it. I'll read out quickly. Text number 36. The personality Godhead manifests himself in a transcendental form, being the subject of his transcendental name, qualities, etc. He is unaffected by all such activity. He appears to be so engaged. Now text number 37 to 40. So what happens? O king, know from me that all living entities are created by the Supreme Lord according to their past states, karma. This includes Brahma, instance, Daksha, periodical hairs, Vasvatamanu, then we call Indra, Chandravarna. So even Brahma is born because of his as per his past activities. So who is Brahma? He is the most pious living entity amongst the unlimited living entities found in this creation. So let me tell you how it works. So from Mahavishnu, when he breathes out, the creation, different universes are created. And then he glances at Prakriti. When he glances at Prakriti, at that point of time, all the living entities are within the body of Mahavishnu. So at that point of time, all that living entities get distributed across different universes. So one universe, which is of one particular size, will get particular quota of living entity. Another universe of particular size, if it is big size, will get n number of living entities. When that living entities enter in that universe, then they are there in the Garbhodaksha Vishnu. Garbhodaksha Vishnu enters that universe, or Mahavishnu expands the Garbhodaksha Vishnu, he enters into the universe, and all those living entities are within the body of Garbhodaksha Vishnu. Now from that Garbhodaksha Vishnu, all the living entity comes out. So for this universe, we have a set number of living entities, which is innumerable. Because the universe itself is so vast. Now in that innumerable living entity, now Garbhodaksha Vishnu has come, somebody has to be born as Brahma. So in this innumerable living entities, the most pious living entity is given the position of Brahma. And there are instances when there is a situation when you don't have somebody who meets the required qualification of Brahma, then Garbhodaksha Vishnu himself expands as Brahma also. Not from Garbhodaksha Vishnu, from Kshirodaksha Vishnu, the avatar comes or expansion happens, who becomes Brahmaji. Is it making some sense like that? This is how the whole creation and the whole planning is happening here. So Indra, Chandra, Varuna, so these are the next level of, it's just like you're about to start a company. You have your company structure, everything in place, and now you want to hire a CEO. And you have 1,000 applicants for that. The one who is most experienced or most qualified in that job, you're going to hire him, that's CEO. And then you're going to hire HR director, you're going to hire finance head, you're going to hire etc. responsibility. Then next level of people are hired. So the whole organization structure is being created, is being discussed here. The great sages like Bhragu, Vyasa, etc. And the monkey-shaped Kimpurusha, human beings, Mritalok, demons, Pishaj, ghosts, spirit, lunatics, even spirits, good, evil stars, goblins, animals in the forest, the birds, house animals, reptiles, the mountains, the moving and steady living entities, the living entities born from embryos, eggs, perspiration, all of that, all of them according to their past deeds are created by the Supreme Lord. So all this Jivatma, who is nothing but the spirit soul, according to the past karma and desire. What is past karma and desire? In the previous creation, how we lived our life and what desires were there. With that desire, the creation ended, destruction happened. We went into the body of Mahavishnu. Now, when again creation happened, we may or may not remember. The Lord remembers everything. So that with same desires we come into this new creation. Based on those desires, we are given, and our of course karmic account balance, we are given among this 8.4 million species. That is how. Otherwise, think about it. How does the living entity gets a particular kind of a body? इसलिए third canto will read it, karma daiva nitrena. Jantu deh utpatte. So how does a living entity takes birth in this world? Deh utpatte. How does he get a body? Bodies are a set, 8 million of varieties of bodies. How does he get a body? Karmana daiva netrena. By karma, and Deva Nitarana means under the subjugation or the management of Deva. You get the next body. Text number 41. Okay, Mother Subhashi, read the translation 41 verse.
According to the different modes of material nature, the mode of goodness, the mode of passion, and the mode of darkness, there are different living creatures who are known as demigods, human beings, and hellish living entities. O king, even a particular mode of nature being mixed with the other two is divided into three, and thus each kind of living creature is influenced by the other modes and acquires its habits also. Text
And
number
42nd verse, Krishna says he appears as different incarnations. There are 6 kind of incarnations. We have what do you call as Vishnu Purusha Avatar. This Mahavishnu, Garbhadaksha Vishnu, all that. Then we have Manvantara Avatar, we have Leela Avatar, we have Guna Avatar, Brahma Vishnu Mahesh, like that, Shakti Avesh Avatar, like this different avatars. So Lord appears 42nd verses in different avatars for the purpose of reclaiming the living entities, taking them back home, back to Godhead. Now, text number 43. Go ahead, Mother Swashri.
1 second. Thereafter,
43 translation.
Thereafter, at the end of millennium, the Lord himself in the form of Rudra, the destroyer, will annihilate the complete creation as the wind displaces the clouds. Text 44.
So Rudra is what? Rudra is nothing but the expansion of the Lord. Rudra is none other than Shiva. So in 9th canto, we'll read how Sankarshan expands himself as Shivji, Mahashiva, or Adishri isko kehte hain. Again, in the light of Bhagavat series, I had almost spent 3 sessions speaking about Lord Shiva in detail. So Lord Shiva is nothing but an expansion of Sankarshan, is non-different than Vishnu, but with a purpose. Every avatar has a purpose to fulfill. So why did Sankarshan expanded as Adi Shiva? For the purpose of destruction. And that Adi Shiva comes into this material creation as Rudra, like that. So why that she is represented as Linga, not as a deity, all that is part of the discussion on the light of Bhagavat episode on who is Lord Shiva. Okay, text number 44, go ahead.
Great transcendentalists thus describe the activities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but the pure devotees deserve to see more glorious things in transcendence beyond these features.
Okay, so if I ask you a question, what do you understand one thing about this creation of this universe? Does the Lord personally creates, or he empowers different living entities and gives them the task of creation, maintenance, and destruction? So how many of you say Lord personally creates? Okay, how many of you say Lord empowers and delegates the responsibility of creation to different living entities? He empowers them, he teaches them, and then he gives them the task. And what he does? He plays the basuri, tararampam. He continues with his leela. And तुम्हें जाके रहना है यहाँ पे जाओ. And he doesn't send anyone from spiritual world to do the creation. Nobody comes from spiritual world for the creation, maintenance, destruction. Those who want to be part of this creation, from there only chooses the qualified people and puts them on the roll and says, continue your lila. तो ब्रह्मा लीला कर, तो रुद्र लीला कर, तो इंद्र की लीला कर, और तो जीवात्मा की लीला, तो मनुष्य की लीला कर, तो स्त्री की लीला कर, and continue. This is called as expert management, which means the owner enjoys the result. I mean, Krishna got nothing to do with the result. Owner continues to live his life, but he has created a system. That is what text number 45 talks about it. Ravi Prabhu, go ahead. Read 45th translation.
Text 45. There is no direct engineering by the Lord for the creation and destruction of the material world. What is described in the Vedas about his direct interference is simply to counteract the idea that material nature is the creator.
Next, continue.
Text 46. This process of creation and annihilation described in summary herein is the regulative principle during the duration of Brahma's one day. It is also the regulative principle in the creation of Mahat, in which the material nature is dispersed.
Okay, if I ask you, what is your regular principle every morning? What would you say? What is the regular principle for you every morning? Mother Sita Thakurani, what do you do every morning? Or what Srila Prabhupada has given you as a regular principle? Go ahead.
getting up and get ready for the Mangalarti and then chant your rounds and then Srimad
Yeah.
Bhagavatam.
So chanting and chanting. Let's say chanting or reading or hearing Bhagavatam, right? So what is your regular principle for devotee every morning? It's chanting or worshipping deities or hearing Bhagavatam, right? What is the regulative principle for Brahma? Creation. So people think if I become Brahma, I'll be so happy. When I read about Brahmaji, I thought I'm very happy to be what I am. I can peacefully sit, chant and dance in the morning. No Brahma dance. Brahmaji had to do Tandav in the morning. He has to do creation. And you know what creation he does every morning? You'll need read in the third canto. Very, very terrible. I mean, one thing of this material world we have discussed this many times. One thing which identifies this material creation. Let me ask all of you. What is one word by which you will identify this material creation? Different than the spiritual world. Give me one word answer. Anyone, quickly. There is something
Dukhalaya
which you should
Sashvatam.
totally, you should know that. No,
Dukhalaya
that is two words.
Sashvatam.
One word answer. That's two
Dukhalaya
words.
Sashvatam.
Yeah, this is
Fear.
two words, na? I'm saying one word. Give me one word answer. What is that one word answer? Anyone? I don't know who all are there right now. Let's see. Who would like to give one word answer? Yes.
Bhai,
Mother Priyanka, very low volume. Say up loudly.
Matter.
Matter. Okay, good answer. What is this material world? One word answer. So this material world is identified with fear. That is material world. Vitaraga bhaya krodha. So many times Krishna says. So bhai, even Brahmaji has fear. And what is Brahmaji's fearful situation? Read in Canto. How at the time of creation, so many things happen. See, all the Rakshas, Bhuta, Preta, Vital, everything is born from Brahma only, na? So they run behind Brahma to torture him. That is discussed later on. Okay, text number 47. O king, I shall in due course explain the measurement of time and its gross subtle feature with the specific symptoms each. But for the present, let me explain unto you the Padma Kalpa. Oh, Kalpa. So much technical thing you discuss right now, Baba. I don't have patience to hear now. So what Shaunaka Rishi said, Sutta Goswami, please tell us, text number 48. Shaunak Rishi Muni speaks. Okay, Ravi Prabhu, go ahead and read until the end of the chapter. Translations.
Text 48, Shaunak Uvach. Shaunak Rishi, after hearing all about the creation, inquired from Suta Goswami about Vidur, for Suta Goswami had previously informed him how Vidur left home, leaving aside all his relatives who were very difficult to live. Text 49 till 50. Shaunak Rishi said, let us know, please, what topics were discussed between Vidur and Maitreya, who talked on transcendental subjects, and what was inquired by Vidur and replied by Maitreya. Also, please let us know the reason for Vidur's giving up the connection of his family members and why he again came home. Please also let us know the activities of Vidur while he was in the places of pilgrimage. Text 51, Sutta Uvach. Sri Sutta Goswami explained, I shall now explain to you the very subjects explained by the great sage in answer to King Parikshit's inquiries. Please hear them attentively.
Now, something very interesting happens. Just like Shaunaka Rishi asked Sutta Goswami, oh, too much of creation, we need some Leela. Please tell us about Vidur Uddhav Samvad, because then direct Krishna Leela will come into picture. Similarly, this was purport, our Acharya says. Similarly, Parikshit Maharaj also said, Sukdev Goswami, can we have a little Leela break? A lot of technical education. Can you please tell me what that Vidura Uddhav Samvad? And like that, in this verse, Sutta Goswami says, yes, let me tell you, I shall now explain to you the very subject explained by the great sage in answer to King Parishit, inquiry, like that. So in other words, in our practice of Krishna consciousness, we need to balance it out with a study of philosophy and Leela. We should not go an extreme of either of it. Otherwise, we become a little bit, I don't know, that's not the best practice of it. So therefore, Prabhupada gave a system of having Srimad Bhagavatam or Bhagavad Gita reading in the daytime, and the night time before go off to sleep, read Krishna book, Leela. In other words, every day we should have some dosage of philosophy. I would say in the beginning we should have 75% dosage of philosophy and 25% dosage of Leela. And as we become more clear with the philosophical concepts, to that degree, you can now have 50% dosage of philosophy and 50% dosage of Leela. Like that. And then as we grow further, then we can have 25% dosage of philosophy and 75% dosage of Leela. And when we are really beyond the modes of material nature, then enter the Leela. All right. Jagadguru Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Many, many congratulations. We have finished the second canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. I do know for the last few chapters, I believe from 7th chapter onward, we haven't uploaded the the quizzes. We need some time. There are too many things are going on, too many fluxes. Website also needs little updates. So in a short while, I'm expecting within a week or two, all the quizzes will go on the website. And after that, once the process restarts, then the quizzes would be uploaded regularly. All right. Until then, continue reading Bhagavatam and enjoy this beautiful nectar known as Mahapurana. Hare Krishna. So with that, we conclude here. Thank you very much for your all kind attention and being part of this Bhagavatam reading and study. Okay, so we shall catch once again next week. I'll conclude.